Hi, I'm Andrew Quinn, the Daily Record's Westminster Reporter, and I'm joined today by Amy Callaghan, the SNP MP for East Dunbartonshire. And we've just had Prime Minister's Questions here in Westminster. And what did you make of it, Amy? There was quite a big event there at the start. Can you perhaps tell us a bit about what happened just before Prime Minister's Questions?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the Labour Party wanted to make such a big song and dance about it. It's very telling that they did, in fact. A far-right Tory MP defected to the Labour Party, the second Tory MP in so many weeks that's defected to the Labour Party. I think it's incredibly telling that far-right Tory MPs feel more comfortable within the Labour Party than they do within the Tory Party these days. Says a lot about the Labour Party's policies.
So it was Natalie Elphicke, who's the Tory MP for Dover, now the Labour MP for Dover. She's very anti-immigration, isn't she? That's kind of her really big thing. She's even said she wants to turn back boats crossing the channel, which is incredibly dangerous. So what do you think? Do you think that hurts Labour, having folk like that joining them, particularly in Scotland?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, she's definitely made immigration her key kind of thing, but she's even made some very damaging claims around, for instance, Marcus Rashford, the Man United player's campaign around child poverty. She made some very damaging statements around his campaign back then, and even Rachel Reeves, the soon-to-be Chancellor, called Natalie out for her quite damaging statements around Marcus's campaign back. That must have been 2022, I would say. But now she's welcoming Natalie into open arms into the Labour Party. I would say a changed Labour Party in those few years. Kind of policies that aren't kind of sort of ending child poverty. They're sort of, I would say, encouraging poverty in this society, and encouraging people like Natalie to join the Labour Party. So very damaging indeed.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because this almost definitely wouldn't happen in Scotland, would it? Because Scottish Labour's fight is so different to Labour in England, especially in the south of England. They're basically fighting a centre-left or left-of-centre battle against the SNP in Scotland.
Yeah, and it would be really interesting to hear what Anna Sarwar's take on this kind of would be, because it is just a very different battleground, isn't it? It's, I mean, Scottish politics is very different to the kind of more centrist ground that they're facing down here. Although we see our more centrist ground is clearly a bit more towards the right that they're facing. They're praising Margaret Thatcher. They're certainly they're looking to votes more on the right and sort of leaning towards people more on the right. And by welcoming folk like Natalie, they're certainly making a swing more to people on the right, and that does not sit well with me and does not sit well with people in Scotland as well. So certainly it's a changed Labour Party.
Keir Starmer clearly tried to use this against Rishi Sunak. He shook Natalie Elphicke's hand before she sat down, and he went on small boat crossings. Yeah. What did you make of his overall performance in Prime Minister's Questions?
I mean, Prime Minister's Questions is not a high point of the week for me as a Member of Parliament. I find it incredibly flat. I don't think it's not reflective of politics in the United Kingdom, I don't think, to be honest with you. I think it's just a bit weak and a bit kind of sort of morally depressing, to be honest with you. I think it's a bit of a flex for politicians to sort of stand up there and for people like Keir Starmer to try and show how powerful they think they are. And really, that's not what politics is all about. It's about the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And it's that kind of half hour isn't really reflective of what politicians are truly all about. I think Keir Starmer I think this stuff will just backfire spectacularly on them, to be honest with you. I think the local election results weren't actually that useful for Labour and have shown that they're not actually appealing to the masses in the way that they would like to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Rishi Sunak did look, though, quite rattled by it. And actually, I think the local elections went pretty badly for the Conservatives last week.
But they were actually quite bad for them, for both the main parties. No one actually came out as a winner from both of them. And I think what both parties done quite well in the run up to the local elections was setting expectations quite well, in terms of showing that neither of them would come out on top, but the Conservatives set expectations quite well in terms of their losses, but Labour set expectations quite well in terms of their wins not being as good as what some people would expect them to be. Had it been back in sort of 95 ahead of Tony Blair's win in 97, we would have been in a very different position. Keir Starmer's not having those incredible victories like Tony Blair had in the run up to 97. Whereas Rishi Sunak is having the losses that we was experiencing the build up to that election. So I mean, I think they've done expectation management well, but they're not having the victories that we would have seen. And I think we see that in PMQs. Keir Starmer is not the kind of the great politician that Tony Blair maybe was back in the day. I certainly don't align myself politically with Tony Blair, but he certainly was an impressive individual. He could command a room.
Yes.
Keir Starmer isn't that politician, and we see that at PMQs week in and week out. He doesn't command the attention. I look to Stephen Flynn and I see the way he holds attention at Prime Minister's questions. He commands the attention of every single individual, every single member of Parliament in that chamber. And that is a skill, that is a political skill worth having. And the silence is golden in the chamber. You'll see that when you're sitting in the press gallery, Andrew.
Yeah, so obviously Stephen today, he went on a different topic than both Starmer and Sunak. He went on Gaza and on stopping arms sales to Israel. How do you think that went? How do you think he did in the chamber overall?
Yeah, I mean, that's this issue is the clear blue water between the Scottish National Party and the other parties in the House of Commons. So I think we need to keep going on the issue of Gaza, and in particular the issue of Rafah right now, and stopping arms export licences to Israel. There's precedent for it. Other Prime Ministers have done it, and Rishi Sunak, for some reason that's unbeknownst to me, unbeknownst to any of us, is holding out on this, and Keir Starmer is following suit because he's terrified of what Benjamin Netanyahu is going to do when he becomes Prime Minister, as he is assuming he is going to. But I think Stephen Flynn once again excelled and done incredibly well for himself in Prime Minister's questions, and I just really hope that Rishi Sunak listens and soon stops arms export licences to Israel, and that the offensive on Rafah doesn't occur.
We also had quite a good question from one of your colleagues, Kirsten Oswald, talking about having vape branding on sports kits. Now she wants that banned, but Rishi Sunak didn't react particularly well, did he? He didn't really give an answer about.
No, so that's the second week in a row that Kirsten's asked a question on the sports kits branding for vape kits, and she's doing incredibly well in this campaign that she's running. Kirsten's very passionate about banning disposable vapes, and in particular the advertising of disposable vapes on sportswear and other places as well, because the advertising of products is incredibly important, and we know that children and young people are particularly susceptible to advertising, and that they can end up taking up these awful habits, and vaping is certainly one of them. So Kirsten is doing an incredible job in the very worthwhile work that she's doing. So Rishi Sunak struggled to come up with a worthwhile answer to that, which is remarkable given he had a chance last week to do it and he's not even thought on anything. So she put something obviously very worthwhile to him in the sense that you said this one week and then put some quite worthwhile evidence to him, and she didn't.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily seem that shut off to it, but it's just he's not addressing it.
He's just not addressing it. That's it, and it's we should be. Obviously, we've seen certain parts of like the Premier League, for instance, banning like gambling advertising, and why are we not banning these really harmful products? We're looking at, I'm on the Health and Social Care Committee, and we're looking at like gambling harms and alcohol harms at the moment in one of our inquiries, and it does untold damage to people, really, really, especially to men's health in particular. And it's something that we should be doing much more on. And there's an awful lot of work that we could be doing on this. And I think hats off to Kirsten for the work that she's doing on it, and it would be nice if the Prime Minister actually listened and done some meaningful action on these really like little niche issues.
Yeah. Well, I know it's something that you've said and your colleagues have said, that it can be quite frustrating in Westminster being in opposition, not really being able to get much done. But this kind of shows how on individual issues you can try and do something. You've been doing that yourself with your trying to remove VAT from sunscreen.
Yeah.
So how's that campaign going? And what do you think the next kind of steps are for
So I actually just held an event in Parliament this morning about my VAT burn campaign.
Yeah.
So it's Skin Cancer Awareness Month this month, the month of May. So I held an event in Parliament, and this is the stuff that people don't see. I'm talking about PMQs being essentially my least favourite part of the week because it's all the song and dance and the showcase of Westminster. But the part that people don't see is the bit that goes on behind the scenes where people are working really hard alongside colleagues sometimes from every party to actually get these like really niche little, sometimes unsexy issues passed in the House of Commons. And I think it's something like quite admirable to be working with colleagues regardless of their party colour and affiliation to get something done on. So my VAT burn campaign is to remove the VAT on sunscreen products because there is a luxury tax charged on sunscreen despite 90% of skin cancers being preventable if adequate sun protection was used. I think it's disgraceful and disgusting that this British government will charge this luxury tax on a healthcare item. And I took it to them in the hope that they were, and maybe the somewhat naive hope that this was an item that had been overlooked, but it is a very deliberate choice that they are happy to charge this tax on sunscreen products. So I've been working with colleagues from across the House of Commons to try and remove the VAT on sunscreen products, working with two other MPs in particular, one Conservative MP, Maggie Throop, who is a melanoma survivor, and another MP, Sir Chris Bryant, who is a Labour MP who also survived melanoma. So that's 3 melanoma surviving MPs working together on a campaign to remove the VAT from skin cancer from sunscreen.
And this is very personal for you as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I survived melanoma at 19 and then again at 21. And it's about using my experience to make this really interesting policy change. And I think policy becomes more interesting and relevant when it comes from a place of experience. And this is the policy change that I've found that I want to make happen.
Okay, we'll move away from Westminster just now. It's not been the most stable of fortnights for your party in Scotland. We've got a new First Minister now, John Swinney. What have you made of all the events in the last fortnight?
I mean, it has been a challenging time. I'm not going to pretend it's not been. That would be silly of me to say that it's not been a difficult period. But I'm glad that we're now set to go into a period of stability. Of course, had we been having this conversation last week, it might have been a different one. But delighted that we're now with John Swinney and that we're set to go into a period of stability. And I'm looking forward to seeing his cabinet announcements later today. Yeah,
and you backed John Swinney to become the leader. You also backed Humza Yousaf before that.
I did.
Or were you quite upset to see Humza leave the role? He was visibly upset as well when he resigned.
So I was a quiet sceptic of the Butte House Agreement. I worked in Holyrood previously. I know how it works probably better than a lot of MPs do, but I know how minority governments work. I knew we had to have some sort of an agreement, and I think it worked well at the time. I think I've always been really proud to be a Scottish National Party MP, mainly because I think the Scottish National Party's values and priorities reflect the people of Scotland's values and priorities. I think being part of the Butte House Agreement has kind of somewhat diluted those values and priorities and changed them from the Scottish National Party's values and priorities and Scotland's values and priorities to something different from that. So I was happy for the Butte House Agreement when it sort of was a quiet sceptic of it initially, but when things have started to kind of progress and change to policies that I was maybe somewhat uncomfortable with, I've now felt a bit more comfortable now in the sense that I thought it had to come to an end. I think the way it ended left a lot to be desired.
Mm.
And I think Hamza absolutely done the right thing in resigning when he did.
Mm.
I think he probably could have dragged it out, maybe like probably a couple more days. Maybe I don't think it could have went on any longer, but a couple of more days. But I think it's, you know, the mark of the man to know when to call it quits. And I think, yeah, he done the right thing. Of course, it's a difficult thing to watch, isn't it? Like I can't pretend that it was an easy thing to sit by and watch someone that you obviously admire and respect and actually just like as a person and as an individual, to go through what he's been through over the last sort of few days and weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Hamza Yousaf is a thoroughly decent individual, but yeah, I will say over the last sort of few weeks, I felt quite sorry for him as First Minister. That's not a position I particularly want. I particularly want my party to be in, where I feel sorry for the First Minister, where my constituents feel sorry for the First Minister. I want the First Minister to be in a position of strength and power. And I think that's where we are now with John Swinney, which I'm absolutely delighted about. So yeah, I feel like we're in a good space now. And
John's appointing a new cabinet today.
Yeah.
Is there anyone you would particularly like to see in it, or is there anyone we should be kind of looking out for, do you think?
Looking out. So, I mean, I've got obviously a number of people that I would like to see in that cabinet, in particular, former MP colleague of mine, Neil Gray, who many people will know and respect throughout Scotland. He is a fantastic individual, very impressive Member of Parliament, very impressive Member of the Scottish Parliament now. I'm sure he will have a very significant and prominent role within John Swinney's cabinet. Mary McCallan is another incredibly talented individual, and of course Kate Forbes, who John has had incredibly robust conversations with. We obviously read that quite a lot in the media, so I'm sure she will have a very prominent role within John's cabinet, and I look forward to seeing what Kate's role will be. I don't actually know Kate that well, but she's a very talented woman in politics, and I look forward to seeing the role that she's going to play.